A black waitress speaks Chinese on call in front of Millionaire, gets fired the next day. It was an ordinary Tuesday morning at Le Cinq, a five-star restaurant nestled in the heart of Manhattan. The sun had just begun to peek through the large windows, casting warm, golden rays over the pristine white tablecloths and the polished silverware. The faint clinking of wine glasses and the soft murmur of hushed conversations filled the air. Among the bustling staff was Tasha Williams, a 24-year-old black woman whose easy smile and hard-working demeanor made her one of the restaurant's favorites. She had always stood out at Le Cinq, not just for her professionalism, but for something more unique, her fluency in Chinese. Tasha's ability to speak multiple languages was a skill she had nurtured from an early age. Growing up in a multicultural neighborhood, she had picked up Spanish, French, and eventually Mandarin. Her mother, an immigrant from Jamaica, had always encouraged Tasha to learn as many languages as she could, believing it would open doors for her in the future. And it had, though she never anticipated how much of an impact it would have on her life at Le Cinq. That fateful day started as any other. Tasha had been assigned to a table for two. The guests were an older man and his younger companion. The man was impeccably dressed, a sign of his obvious wealth. Tasha had quickly learned to recognize the patrons who were there to show off their money, but her training had always taught her to treat everyone equally, regardless of their status. So, she smiled brightly and greeted them as she approached their table. "Good morning, sir. Can I get you started with something to drink?" she asked with a warm tone. The man nodded curtly, flipping through the wine menu with an air of impatience. His companion, a well-dressed woman in her early 30s, glanced up at Tasha and gave a polite smile. As Tasha poured the wine and offered the rest of the menu, she overheard a snippet of their conversation. It was in Chinese. Tasha paused for a moment, her curiosity piqued. Mandarin wasn't a language she encountered often at Le Cinq. Still, her training had equipped her well, and she could recognize certain words, phrases, and tones. The man and his companion were talking about the market, and she could tell from the tone that they were discussing something of high value. It wasn't often she heard such passionate discussions in Chinese, but she didn't think much of it. The woman suddenly turned to Tasha with a slight frown. "Excuse me, do you speak Chinese?" she asked, her voice laced with curiosity. Tasha paused for a second before responding, her heart skipping a beat. She had been caught. She had been speaking fluent Chinese to her friends and family, but it wasn't something she often used at work. She had no real reason to, after all. But Tasha was never one to shy away from a challenge. "Yes, I do," she replied with a soft smile. "Mandarin, to be precise." The woman's eyes widened in surprise. "No way. That's amazing. My father is a businessman from Beijing. He has some meetings with Chinese clients later today. I can barely speak the language myself." Tasha chuckled. "Well, you're a step ahead of many people, at least." The man, who had been quietly sipping his wine, now turned to her with interest. "So, you speak Chinese, huh?" he said in English, his voice carrying a hint of intrigue. "How did you learn?" Tasha's smile didn't falter. "I picked it up in school, and over the years, I practiced whenever I could. It's a beautiful language, very rich and expressive." The man nodded thoughtfully. "Impressive. I didn't expect to find someone here who could speak it." Tasha merely nodded and smiled. There was no need to elaborate. It wasn't uncommon for her to surprise people with her abilities. She made a mental note to bring them their next course, but as she turned to walk away, something unexpected happened. The man leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice as he addressed her. "If you're ever interested in a change of pace, I have connections in the city, businesses looking for bilingual professionals like yourself. You should think about it." Tasha felt a rush of excitement, but quickly masked it. "I appreciate the offer, but I'm happy here for now. Thank you for your kindness." With a polite nod, she walked away to tend to her other customers, her mind swirling with thoughts of the unexpected compliment and offer. The rest of the day passed in a blur, with Tasha fulfilling her duties as usual. She couldn't shake the encounter, and she found herself wondering if there was more to this businessman than met the eye. However, the next day, when she showed up for her shift, something felt off. She noticed the manager, Mr. Clark, seemed a little more tense than usual, as though he had something on his mind. Tasha dismissed it at first, thinking it was just a bad day for him, but then the phone call came. Mr. Clark motioned for Tasha to come over, his face stern. "Tasha, I need to speak with you for a moment." She walked over, concern creeping into her chest. "Is everything okay?" Mr. Clark didn't mince words. "I got a call this morning from one of our most important clients. He complained about something you did yesterday." Tasha's stomach dropped. "What? What did I do?" "He said you were speaking Chinese to him in front of his guest," Mr. Clark replied, his voice tight, "and that made him uncomfortable." Tasha blinked, taken aback. "I was just speaking with his companion, who asked if I spoke Chinese. I didn't do anything wrong." Mr. Clark's gaze was unwavering. "It's not about right or wrong, Tasha. It's about perception. You made the guest feel alienated. He didn't appreciate it. You should have known better than to speak in a language that wasn't English." Her heart sank as she tried to process his words. "But it was a private conversation. I didn't do anything offensive. I was just being polite. I understand that, but it doesn't matter," Mr. Clark said, cutting her off. "The client is a millionaire, and we can't afford to lose his business over something like this. I'm sorry, Tasha, but you're being let go." Tasha stood frozen, a wave of disbelief washing over her. "You're firing me? Because I spoke a different language?" Mr. Clark's face remained neutral, as though he had no choice in the matter. "It's not personal, Tasha, but in this business, we have to consider the feelings of every customer, especially those with influence. It's the way things work." Tasha felt a lump form in her throat, a sense of betrayal and shock, overwhelming her. "I can't believe this," she murmured, barely able to hold back her emotions. Mr. Clark nodded stiffly, signaling the end of the conversation. "Please gather your things and leave as soon as possible. I'll have someone escort you out." As Tasha walked to the back of the restaurant, she felt the weight of the situation bearing down on her. She had worked so hard to get to this point in her life, struggling through college, picking up languages, working long shifts, and pouring everything she had into her job. And now, just like that, it was all over because she had spoken Chinese. She gathered her belongings, her hands trembling as she stuffed her apron into her bag. Her mind raced. Was it really true? Could speaking another language be a reason to lose her job? She had never imagined something like this could happen in the 21st century, especially in a place that prided itself on diversity. Tasha exited through the back door, the cool air of the alley hitting her face like a slap. She stood there for a moment, trying to collect her thoughts. The street was busy, full of people hurrying to their next destination, unaware of the storm brewing inside her. The next day, Tasha walked into a small cafe, a local spot she had always admired. With a newfound sense of resolve, she handed her resume to the manager. "I'm looking for a new job," she said, her voice firm. "And I'm not going to let anything, especially ignorance, stop me from getting what I deserve." The manager glanced at her resume and smiled. "Well, it looks like we've got a spot for someone like you." Tasha's lips curled into a determined smile. She wasn't going to let one man's small-mindedness define her future. If anything, she was going to rise higher.